Welcome to the Red Sneaker Writers Podcast. News, interviews, and writing tips for people who are serious about having a writing career and want some practical knowledge to help them achieve it. Your host is the nationally best-selling author of more than 50 books, William Bernhardt.
Hello, Red Sneaker Writers. This is episode 50, our golden anniversary sort of episode, going out on July 27, 2020. My very special guest for this golden anniversary episode of the Red Sneaker Writers podcast is Caro Begin. And Caro, let me apologize in advance if I mispronounced your name. I've been practicing all morning, but I probably still didn't get it right. She is a terrific author who's published under her own name, at least 2 pen names, with great success. She has also, over the years, developed an expertise in marketing and specifically author websites. She's going to be teaching a masterclass on that topic this year at WriterCon, and I've asked her to give us a little sneak preview on this episode of the podcast. We'll also be offering some writing tips, but first, the news. Probably noticed that I like to lead off the news segment with something controversial or whatever the biggest controversy is in the book world. This is part of my plan to cause you to realize that this podcast is indispensable. So even if you haven't heard about it yet, let me tell you what's going on in the big book world. The largest, not conspiracy, but controversy going on right now, might be some conspiracy, who knows, but I meant to say controversy, has to do with the very well-known author and self-publishing instructor, Mark Dawson, who you probably heard about. He does the self-publishing show podcast, and there's a YouTube channel, and teaches lots of seminars and writes. He's British. The controversy has to do, no, not that he's British, that he's got a new book out, a thriller called The Cleaner, which hit number 8 in his home country, and the Sunday Times, what they used to call the London Times, on the hardback list. Why is this controversial? Well, it turns out Mark bought 400 copies of his own books, paid about £3,600. That's over $5,000 in U.S. dollars. According to him, the book was already at number 13 on the list, but he wanted to be in the top 10, so he went out and bought a bunch of them, and sure enough, his book rose to number 8 on the bestseller list. Of course, once Nielsen Bookscan found out about this, they immediately removed his book from the list altogether, so I'm not sure that's really worked out well, but that's what happened. Obviously, he wanted to be on, in the UK, the Sunday Times list is probably the equivalent of the New York Times bestseller list here in the US. It's like the gold standard, what everybody looks to, even if it's not really all that scientific or even accurate. It's the big kahuna in terms of bragging rights. So he got himself in the top 10. And was almost immediately criticized for it by people saying, well, this was disingenuous or dishonest or immoral or whatever. Just to be clear, there's no rules out there prohibiting this. Anybody can buy a book, and Dawson is far from the first person to ever do something like this. Perhaps the most recent example of this would be Donald Trump Jr., who back in 2017 wrote a book called Triggered, which went to the number 1 spot on the New York Times list after the Republican National Committee bought a huge quantity of them. A big bulk order cost about $94,000 US dollars a week before it was released. So solely because of this one order from political affiliates, he was number 1 before the book was actually released, although they didn't yank him when they found out. There was no secret about it, but that's what put him on the New York Times list. Perhaps even more interesting is the fact that this week Donald Trump Jr. announced that he was coming out with a new book, But this time he's going to self-publish it, probably thinking he'd rather have 70% of the profits than the 8 or 10 that he got after that big buy by the RNC. Anyway, my point is that what Dawson did has been done by people who have the financial means to do it for some time. And perhaps that's what's sticking in people's craw the most, the fact that not everyone has the financial means to do that. So it doesn't seem like a level playing field. Well, I know you want to know what I think about this, Red Sneaker Riders, so let me just tell you, I think this is not Sunday school, this is business. And in business, people do things to promote their products, and it seems to me this is what an example of it. I'm not sure why he went around talking about it, but he's hardly the first person to do it. And as far as money goes and business, and it's never been a level playing field, why would anyone expect it to be now? Here's the truth about bestseller lists. They're great for bragging rights, but they have never been that accurate or scientific, particularly the New York Times list, which is very New York-centric, tends to follow its own. They don't get any data from Amazon. They don't even get it from most bookstores. They have a handful of bookstores that report to them. They use the book scan numbers, which only apply to brick and mortar stores, and it has never been scientifically accurate. Plus, they have all these different lists. They discourage and dislike self-published books. They so disliked having J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter books clogging up their bestseller list that they created a separate children's book list and put them all on that. It has never been that accurate. It's just something for people to brag about, and nothing about this has changed. So perhaps instead of just criticizing Dawson for wanting to get good publicity for himself, we should stop paying so much attention to bestseller lists and focus more on books that we like and promoting books that we really think are good to other readers. Here's some more news about innovations going on in the book world despite the lockdown and all the troubles. Some of them working well, some of them less so. I really enjoyed reading about a new book launch being planned by an author named Melanie Conroy Goldman. Her debut, The Likely World, is scheduled to come out in early August 4th, and she was very frustrated by the fact that she couldn't have a decent book launch because of the lockdown. No parties or book signings or whatnot. She says, I've spent 48 years writing The Likely World, and COVID-19 devastated my launch plans. So she has instead created a virtual tour that's going to have 10 stops, but that's not my favorite part of it. The best part is that she's going to have what may be the publishing world's first ever drive-in book launch at the Finger Lakes Drive-In in Auburn, New York on August 4th. She's going to have a conversation with another author that will be broadcast so people can hear it. And attendees will be treated to swag bags, free popcorn, and a screening of Say Anything, the beloved John Cusack movie. Another innovation that doesn't appear to be working quite as well is Barnes & Noble's new kitchen stores. You may recall hearing on this podcast, if not anywhere else, that around 2017, Barnes & Noble was experimenting with new formats and approaches, ways to boost their sales and get more people in. In this case, the idea was to combine a bookstore with a full-service bar and restaurant. There are at least 4 of them. I know because the one in Plano, Texas was the 4th, but it's just been closed, and they say they're going to renovate it in some way or another. To be fair, the store has been closed since March because of the coronavirus, so it's possible that this new format did not get a fair rollout. It's also possible that now that the corporation has a new head, James Daunt, that he wants to try some new formatting ideas of his own. More controversy. Yet another author being twittered out of her release, Alexandra Duncan, canceled her young adult novel, which is called Ember Days, hours after the book wasn't even out, but after the cover reveal online. She decided to cancel it. Why? I bet you're already kind of guessing if you've been listening to this podcast for long. This was going to be a major release from HarperCollins, but as part of this cover reveal, some of the book's description released, including the statement, here I'm quoting, Naomi is the granddaughter of a powerful Gullah, that's G-U-L-L-A-H, conjure woman, sent to Charleston to combat an evil force circling the city and hiding in plain sight as Deidre's protege. Well, the problem, of course, is the author is a white woman. She's not a member of this culture that she's writing about, and some people didn't like that at all. She got a Twitter storm and decided, she says after talking to other authors, to back down, saying that she didn't mean to offend, she did her research, but perhaps she is not the right one to be writing this book. You already know what I'm going to say about it. I hate to think we're heading toward a world where no author can write about characters who do not look like them in the mirror or are not a part of the culture they grew up in. To some extent, writing, like acting, is about adopting new personas. Now, if she had said something offensive, or if she hadn't done her research, I might be more sympathetic. But since no one's actually read the book, they've just read the ad copy, how can anybody actually make that statement? I just think it is a sad thing that this book has, in effect, been censored before it's even been released. A couple of quick stories. There's been a major change in the world of copyright registration. You probably know you can register your written work for copyright online, fill out a form, and pay a fee. I'm not saying you have to or should. Legally, your intellectual property is copyrighted as soon as you create it. The only reason for filing or registering is if some situation arises and you've got to prove that you had created it and you did it on this date. But the chances of that arising are pretty slender. Anyway, the change is that it's now possible for authors to register up to 50 so-called short works published online with the U.S. Copyright Office by paying one single flat fee of $65. Well, $65 for up to 50 works is a pretty good deal. What's interesting to me is the part about published online. I have previously cautioned people about allowing the work to be published online on their website, somebody else's website, a blog, or one of the many online literary magazines, because in most people's view, that is publication. This at least allows you to copyright them so that you can demonstrate with some authority that you did actually write them. It does not, however, change the fact that they have in some electronic format already been published, which might discourage someone else from publishing it if you were thinking. So in other words, if you're thinking about submitting this to a publisher, don't allow it to appear online. You may be wondering what constitutes a short work. I did too. According to the Copyright Office, the work must be between 50 and 17,500 words in length. I mean, who makes up this stuff? Nope. I'm sorry, that's 17,502 words, so it's no longer short. And I guess if it's 49 words, it's just too short. It's not even a work anymore or something. Anyway, those are the government rules. Some new imprints you want to hear about, 2 of them at Penguin Random House. Tiny Reparations Books is a new imprint that will publish literary fiction and nonfiction. If you're wondering about the name, Tiny Reparations, is because this imprint is being designed to cure the perceived lack of diversity in publishing. So presumably, if you are an author of color or a member of some cultural minority, this might be a place for you to submit your work. They're also creating a new imprint called Flamingo, which will be a new picture book imprint, part of their Penguin Young Readers. And the New Age publisher called Inner Traditions